Hey guys, Evan from PC Gamer. I'm here at the Game Developers Conference 2013 here in San Francisco with Gaslamp Games in from Vancouver. How's it going, guys?
Great.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
So I've got Nicholas,
Hello.
Daniel,
Hi.
and David. And why don't you guys quickly tell us what your roles are on the project on Clockwork Empires, which you're working on right now?
I'm the studio's technical director, which means I'm responsible for programming and more programming and crying.
So you're the John Carmack of Gaslamp, essentially.
I don't have a driver's license. I don't have a car.
He doesn't have enough Ferraris for that.
I don't have a rocket license either. Do you actually need a rocket license, or is this something you just?
You do need a
just do
license. You do need a license.
This
Yeah.
is true.
Yeah, there's a space agency for that.
Oh, good.
All right, Daniel, speaking of rockets, you have a physics degree,
Yeah.
as it happens, but you're the CEO.
Yeah, kind of fell into it. So I started off doing programming and stuff for Gaslamp, and now doing some of the business stuff, level design. We all kind of share the design seat, and we wear a lot of hats.
Great. And David, what about yourself?
I'm the art director, and I mostly just boss around the artists all day.
He also thinks about death.
Art is pain.
Yeah.
Art is pain.
Art is pain.
Terrific. So you guys did Dungeons of Dreadmore, which we
Yeah.
really liked. Right now you're working on Clockwork Empires. Why don't you catch up? Anybody that hasn't heard about the game, what's the concept? Yeah.
Sure. Okay, so Clockwork Empires is mostly a game about telling stories through characters in the game. And it's about how you manage crazy problems that happen. The game is a sort of set in a Victorian era steampunk kind of world with sort of an Elizabethan kind of exploratory sort of feel to it. And you are a bureaucrat in the Empire, and your goal is to basically do whatever you want, but the Empire actually wants you to form some goals for them. And so you try to tame the land, and you try to keep people from getting maimed horribly and steam accidents and all that sort of thing.
Right. And Dwarf Fortress lines up with your guys' design. That's a big inspiration for you guys. Why don't you tell us about how that integrates?
Our original tagline was kind of steampunk Dwarf Fortress with a little H.P. Lovecraftian twist, and we're trying to get away from that a little bit, but that's still the easiest way to describe it that makes people go, ooh. So, in the sense that you have a bunch of sort of independent agents who you interact with through assigning them jobs and stuff. Yes, in that sense it's very Dwarf Fortress inspired, but there's also a lot of Anno, a lot of SimCity, a lot of just generally, like everything else we do, things people like and things we like.
Yeah.
Mainly things we like. We don't care if you like them or not.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of influence from all the classic city builder games, like as you said, Anno, the Impressions, City Builders, Caesar, Emperor. I loved all of that stuff.
But there is a layer of insanity.
There is a
Within
layer.
Clockwork
There is a layer of
Empires.
insanity.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us about that?
Well, essentially, I mean, it is the untamed frontier, and this is where the H.P. Lovecraft comes in. Is that you do have to contend with entities from other places that are not here, and yes, David, you take this one.
Well, there's this notion that the Empire is sort of the metaphysical center of order. Like, the further you get out, the more strange things get. It's like the medieval maps of the world where they draw monsters on the edges because they didn't know. But in our world, that stuff's real.
Yeah, they're the real monsters on the edges. And so one of the initial designs that really attracted us to the project when we were just sort of coming up with, just sort of spitballing when we were thinking about which project we were going to do, the idea of madness just sort of came out as something that we thought was really neat, and the idea that there'd be influences, like you'd uncover an artifact, or you'd stumble upon something just strange in the wilderness, and
Cattle mutilation.
maybe, who knows? And then you basically that thing would carry with it this madness. And if one of your characters went and discovered it and said, was susceptible to such a thing, he'd pick it up and he'd want to just tell everybody about this thing that he found. And so he takes it to the center of town, and suddenly you've got a real problem on your hands. Or people start, because the game is about characters, and the characters can make unique choices. And so they'll have personalities, and they'll decide whether to work or whether to go to the pub, or whether to
Join a cult.
And you kind of want them to build the stuff that you want them to build, because you've got specific things that you're trying to achieve. And the madness is really one of the ways that we try to motivate the characters to sort of get in your way a little bit, because one of the big problems with a lot of the city builders that we've loved is that once you sort of master the mechanics, there's really that's the problem. Like, that's the thing that you're really trying to figure out. And once you've solved that, you could play SimCity 2000 without ever worrying about anything. And so we want to try and challenge people as the game is developing, and that's one of the ways that we're learning or trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, there's this notion of sort of an entropy that will bring down your orderly city.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, in SimCity, like at the end, all you can do is throw Godzilla at it because you're done. But
our basic goal as a bureaucracy is, of course, that the bigger the failure you produce at the end of your time as a junior bureaucrat, the more successfully you'll be rewarded and promoted. This model's real government, very effectively.
You know, cultists and dangerous things that are out to get you. Can some of these be utilized for your benefit of your colony?
Yeah, we do have this notion of making a sort of Faustian bargain. And I mean, it's always like you can get great rewards, but you're gonna have to pay for it. It'll like increase the sort of madness of everyone. And Nicholas, you want to say something?
Yeah, like the story that we did with the artifact.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about?
Yeah. So we have been writing basically design documents in the form of stories for trying to figure out how these things will actually work. And so we've sort of talked about that before. There will be things you can find that offer rewards at a price, and it's a terrible price, and anybody who's read enough Lovecraft or certain other sorts of stories will know exactly how it all ends.
What's an example of that? Yeah.
Well, the story that we did, we had the notion of finding something in a mine that was a coffin that could be attached to buildings, and that maybe it increased productivity, but maybe you ended up with pipes that screamed in unearthly tongues, that kind of a thing.
Well, it wasn't maybe, it was kind of both. It was kind of both, and you don't really find these things out until you play with them. So it's really like it's sort of an opt-in, like, you know, like, do you want to take this risk? And I mean, it's those choices that make these sorts of games really interesting. I mean, all games are about choices, but, you know, like, some choices we want to make very clear to the player exactly what's going to happen. Some choices we want to say, you know, we're not going to tell you what's going to happen. It's going to be interesting. Do you want to jump in, you know, and see where we're going to take you with that?
I mean, Dwarf Fortress wouldn't be Dwarf Fortress, and it wouldn't be as successful as it was, I don't think, if the Something Awful forum hadn't gotten a hold of it and done a Let's Play, which they called Boat Murdered, which is just 30, 50 pages of people documenting the insanity of everything going hideously wrong. We want to encourage that. We're building the game to encourage that. We're building tools to encourage that. And that's a big part of the experience, is just also what happens almost outside of playing the game, but you're actually telling it to other people. The best stories are always the stories that people make up for themselves around their own gameplay. That was a big thing at the narrative design panels this year, and it's something we're huge believers in.
Yeah, well, we talk about all these ways that the colony can fail, and that's like, it's really important that that's not the game failing. It's like, we had this line, even if you fail, it's a narrative success. Right. Like, things going spectacularly wrong is just great. It makes a great story, and like, we want to encourage that, and even give sort of gameplay rewards for that.
Yeah, your colony being set on fire by mad poets or whatever, that's not a failure, that's a success. It's an enormous success. It's just a success where everybody died.
Yeah, you just have to figure out a way to spin it the right way, and then maybe even the Empire will be okay with that and give you another chance.
Yeah, historically, like the charge of the Light Brigade. Like, these guys charged in, they got slaughtered, and then, you know, people wrote poetry about it, and it was great.
And the Empire shall continue forever. God bless the Queen.
So this is something we talked about last year, like this notion of like history preserving what happened to your colony, and perhaps it even appearing in later games that you start, like later game saves almost. Yeah. Can you talk about sort of how that might be implemented?
Yeah, there is a notion that you will, I mean, again, very inspired by Dwarf Fortress, I think. You will create a world, and then you will have campaigns within that world. Events from other campaigns that have gone hideously wrong, or maybe even survivors, we're not sure, still fussing over the details, will filter back into your current campaign. So we have, for instance, we have randomly generated art and poetry. Poets may be inspired by events of previous failures, or also the current failures, to write about them and produce poetry for you that nobody will read, until the poet dies and the poetry becomes famous. It's modeled on real poetry.
So almost along the lines of like the SimCity newspaper in different form. Is that the right lines to think of?
that's actually a matter of it's something that's come up a lot, and I think that like we've talked about it because the SimCity newspaper was one of the first instances of the things like just random happenstance in a game actually like taking center stage, and they're trying to make evident to you these cool things that are happening.
Yeah, the game's sort of documenting your playing of the game.
Yeah,
and putting it in the world, which is just great.
Yeah, it's fantastic. What we're really trying to figure out though is like how you make that a little bit more exciting, because I mean for a lot of people the news tickers and the newspapers for SimCity like 2003 and so forth, they became something that nobody read, and like we want to make sure that if that everybody gets the right level of engagement that they want from it. So if you're a player and your only goal is to just like blow up as many things as possible, and you don't you're that's your focus, we don't want it to get in your way and just be something that you click through like an ad or something. But at the same time, we want that stuff to be as available as possible for the people who really want to hear those stories and really want to be made aware of the crazy stuff that's happening that is going on in the city.
Basically, we only want to put things in the game that are very engaging and that people want to interact with. If there's something we put in the game and you don't want to interact with it, then it's a waste of sort of our time and also yours. So we have to figure out the right balance, which includes, is there actually a real newspaper or not? I think there's a newspaper. Daniel is not so sold in the newspaper.
I'm
Cast your votes now.
Yeah.
They're saying design in progress, right before us.
That's the way it happens.
Of course.
Yeah.
So speaking of SimCity, I'm curious if you guys have had a chance to play the new game.
I really want to. We went and watched Ocean Quigley's talk about the artistic direction of SimCity, and
that was fantastic.
Oh man,
yeah, I love that guy's work.
Yeah, we're huge fanboys of Ocean's.
Blog,
yeah, he's great. No, I mean it's one of those things. I mean they've had some issues, and those issues shouldn't really take away from the game. I think that the way that they're engaging multiplayer is really cool, because SimCity just inherently isn't a game that works well with multiplayer, and so the ways that they're trying to incorporate that, I think, are really neat. And I think that they're going to have a big impact on the way that people try to incorporate multiplayer into single-player type games to try and make them more social. Because again, I mean, what they're trying to do is what we're all trying to do. We're trying to get people to enjoy our story, or the games that we make and the stories that they tell, and to talk to people about them.
Yeah, can you talk to me about comparing SimCity style multiplayer with what you guys are intending to do in terms of like sharing game saves and whatnot?
Sure.
SimCity was it. Not everybody actually wants to play multiplayer. We think it's something that we encourage. We want you to actively go out and share it with your friends. So most of what we're building is building around sort of ways of encouraging you to tell stories. And maybe you're not the greatest writer, but maybe somebody you know is, or you just want to document this funny thing that happened. So most of our sort of multiplayer storytelling stuff works around that level. At the same time, we also have some level of up to four player, quote cooperative unquote support, where
well, it's like the Minecraft model. Like you have people in that you're all in the server, and whether you choose to help each other or not is entirely up to you. And that makes it way more interesting, because you're not locked into one choice. You can be playing with your friend, but secretly building an army while you're trading stuff. Like that could. It makes the number of interesting choices that you can have in a multiplayer setting just a lot more interesting.
Do you put the maddening statue in your town or your friend's town? What happens if you put the maddening statue in your friend's town? Will he retaliate with another maddening statue?
All right, so we're on the other side of the Moscone Center with Gaslamp Games. Again, we've teleported. We're taking this interview around the globe slowly, and Daniel, we were talking about just the general progress of the game right now, how it's come since we last talked to you.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about this notion of mega projects within Clockwork Empires. They're sort of analogous to Wonders and Civ, but they're different. And I mean, you guys, of course, have your own take on things like you usually do. So why don't you tell me about where the thinking lies right now about mega projects?
Sure. Okay, so mega projects are actually kind of a point of hot debate within the design community at Gaslamp. There are sort of two notions, I think, of the way that a mega project can work. One of them is the classic Civ style. You're building a thing and it's going to take 30 turns and you're investing a lot of resources in it, and it does something really unique and interesting and special. And those are really cool for a number of reasons. I mean, people really love those. Obviously, you want to have that thing that you've spent the most time on, and it's like a point of pride, and it's a thing that you can build an entire strategy around in many games and stuff like that. But it has some detriments in that we can only write so many of those. Like, we can only put in as many of those as we have time for. And so one of the the alternative, or the other school of thought, which is also has its downsides, is that you could actually, instead of having us design the mega projects, you could have the players designing their mega projects. In which case we have elements within the game that like factories and stuff like that, that through combining them in interesting ways, you can unlock some really cool things. And this has the benefit of the fact that you can create your own. You could make a turret that shoots electricity or whatever you wanted, because you've just built up this this unique, totally unique, basically a machine that just comes from the player. And these both have like costs and benefits, obviously. And so what we're trying to do now is trying to figure out, like, do we have time to do both? Like, which one, like, because we're a writing studio. We really enjoy writing stuff, and the mega projects are a great opportunity, like the Civ style mega projects are a great opportunity for us to say, this is this weird thing that we thought up while, at 3 o'clock in the morning while we had like triple espressos like 5 hours before, we're all dead. So we can inject a lot of like great sense of setting and sense of tone with that style writing, but at the same time we can only write so many, and we want to also make the game about things that players create. And so like it's a difficult process for us to invent a way that we could support both, like just from a user interface perspective, like how do you convey both those ideas to people? And so we're going back and forth on it a lot. We've fought in the pit with our knives or whatever, we feel really strongly about it. They will be in, and they'll be in somehow. We just we haven't quite settled on it yet. I think it's going to be one of those things that just takes iteration.
Stay tuned, sports fans.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll try everything we can think of. We'll give it to people and we'll say, what feels best to you. We'll try and figure out ways to just cram as much content in as possible. But how that's going to look, we're not sure yet.
Cool. So along those lines, it sort of gets me thinking about what you guys' attitudes are about modding right now in Clockwork Empires, and if it's something you're absolutely committed to, what do you think players will be able to mod and create? Will you use Steam Workshop? Yeah, that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah. Modding was, of course, really successful for us for Dreadmore. We were, I think, the first indie title on the Steam Workshop, which is really good. Had a great experience. There will be some sort of mod support for Clockwork Empires, but because it's a different game than Dreadmore, where everything's in 3D, there's a lot more AI systems, a lot more complicated. We have scripting now, which actually modding people will love, I'm sure. Exactly how it works and what you can mod, again, somewhat of a mystery.
We love modding. It'll be in the game. We're working as hard as we can to figure out a way to make this work. But again, it's one of those things that, there are games that mods work really well on, and those games are ones that the studios really just have a fantastic approach for. Skyrim is a great example. Skyrim mods work perfectly. They're really exciting. But it's like there are some issues with like having a multiplayer game, like getting everybody's mods up to date and so forth. So like we're basically going to try to find a way to get the mods in the game with as little friction to the player as possible. Like we want people to be able to get them, play them, not have them crash the game, be able to play them with their friends and all that stuff. We're just trying to figure out the way to do that also makes it as accessible as possible.
All of our infrastructure right now around modding is figuring out what can we do so that it doesn't happen like that. And it'll be, let's provide the best experience we can where everything just works. Again, lessons learned from Dreadmore is we've learned a lot of lessons about how not to do modding, and now we just got to figure out what it looks.
Dreadmore fans.
Yes, thank you, Dreadmore fans, for putting up with the broken modding. Well, it's not broken.
It's just surprising sometimes.
It's performance art. I call it still life and suffering users.
So speaking of Dreadmore, let's sort of back up a little bit and talk about how Dreadmore, a $5 game, regularly on sale for less than $5 and available with some smaller DLC on Steam. How such a relatively small game made pursuing this big ambitious project possible. You guys didn't pursue Kickstarter, as far as I know. You're not planning to at this time. how is that possible? I mean, you've grown in size since Dreadmore, of course.
Yeah, I mean, we were really surprised. I mean, we've said this before and we'll say it again. We were really surprised that how much people loved our game. We're really happy about it. And sort of, like, it really, it gave us a lot of confidence in some ways. I mean, we weren't really sure that, we could make a studio after that. And so it gave us a lot of confidence to say, okay, like, people like our stuff. We've iterated on this so many times that we're pretty sure that it wasn't a total, just fluke. We're pretty sure that, we have something to contribute here. What else can we do, and what's the area that we're most excited in to do it? And we just sort of threw up a bunch of ideas. Like, we had tons of design documents, pitches, just one-line, bullet point things on a list on the internet, and we're just throwing ideas out, trying to figure out what we could do next. And we had a big list, and we just tried to decide which one we were most excited about. Like, bar none, didn't matter if it was something that we thought there'd be a market for. Like, what really excited us the most, and it just happened that I think that people are going to be really interested in our next game, and which is awesome. But we came up with that list, and then we thought, okay, well, we've got some idea of what it would cost to actually hire the people to do this. How could we make that work, and do we have enough money to make that work, and could we find enough money to make that work? And we looked at Kickstarter, and we looked at stuff like that. We eventually found something that I think was a great fit for us. I mean, we wanted to be in a position where basically at the end of it, we ended up growing a little bit as a company. We had a few more options open. Canada has a wonderful investment, I guess it's sort of an investment platform called the Canada Media Fund, which we're taking advantage of, and it's been just tons of awesome stuff for us. It basically allowed us to do this game because we couldn't have done it without them. We looked at Kickstarter. I mean, we looked at a couple of those things, and they, there are discussions that we've had because, I mean, it's part of gaming right now. Kickstarter is a very big thing, and all the discussions that we sort of come up with around Kickstarter are that it's a really interesting idea, and I feel like in the eyes of the people who are investing in it, it's a little bit misrepresented. I think a lot of the people who are basically pre-ordering games on Kickstarter are doing it expecting that what they're doing is pre-ordering a game. And I think that's not exactly what you're doing. What you're doing is you're investing in a company. And it's basically charity because they don't really have to give you what you're getting back. And it didn't feel like we could just make a game and give it to people and have them pay us for it. And that's something that we really like.
Yeah. Kickstarter is I think it's very easy to disappoint people on Kickstarter who go in and they don't get what they came out. We'd rather not do that and then delight you, which is it's a much better idea in general. Definitely. And we're really fortunate that we can do that. I think it's not an opportunity a lot of studios have.
Yeah. As lead artist, you're working in this really pretty unique context where you have kind of the elegant Victorian era architecture and dressage and things like that. But it, underneath the surface is Cthulhu potentially and other Lovecraftian things. So, what's it like to work on a game like that?
Well, to start, it's very strange starting to work with other artists. I had to hiring other artists, not just working with them and bossing them around. I had to read the Employment Standards Act 3 times and all this stuff. We were, for Dreadmore, working in the basement, and then going from that, and now we're in an office, and these people will come to me and they say, can you look over this work? I'm like, all right. And it's really cool. I mean, I get to tell them what to do. And
it's what everyone dreams of, domination.
Yeah. That's really aesthetic. Well, I love machinery, basically. I think that shows in my work. You can even see all the steampunk in Dreadmore, pipes and gears and all that.
Yeah. What are some of the most fun things for you to design so far? I saw a landing craft.
Oh yes.
You designed, yeah.
No, I do. I love the machines. I've been doing a lot of concept art for we have these sort of modular pieces of factories you sort of attach to a building to make it all work together. Still fitting that all together technically, but also the monsters, which I won't say too much about. I don't want to ruin it, but those
are fun.
Well, I'll say one thing. It's an easy way to do it is you just take any deep sea creature, put it on land. You're done. That's nature has done all the heavy lifting there.
Yeah, no kidding.
Nature always finds a way.
So what about away from the visual side? Have you guys started producing music for the game? What are your thoughts about what the music should sound like? Is the music going to change when something unexpected happens?
Yeah. So we actually have a dynamic music system which we've been building with Matthew Steele, our composer, who you may remember from Dreadmore. Basically, the music changes as you play the game. One of the big complaints we had from Dreadmore is that the soundtrack was great, but if you've got 80 hours worth of playtime and you've heard every track 10 times on average, it's just not so good. So what we're trying for Clockwork Empires is that we have basically tunes of 6 layers of music, and we fade between the layers and adjust how everything is mixed and what elements you hear in the sound and what elements you don't hear in the sound, depending on what's going on the screen at some time. So if you're being productive, you'll hear more factory themes. If you're discovering things, you'll hear more discovery themes. If everything is going insane, you'll hear the insanity themes, and if everybody's dead, you'll hear the tragedy themes. So, but you can mix them too, so you can have insane tragedy or insane productivity or tragic battles.
Yeah.
And
one of the things that's been interesting, though, just from a style perspective, is the notion that, it is a Victorian era sort of thing, and what were they listening to at that point in time? And there's a lot of brassy instruments and woodwinds and stuff like that, but it gets a little heavy-handed after a while. I mean, you don't want that constantly, and so we've been trying to come up with interesting ways to inject some other stuff in really funky ways, just to change things up a little bit.
And if you look at what the steampunk community is doing for steampunk music, oddly it's all hip-hop, which isn't quite appropriate.
Yeah,
it's like Professor Elemental and Mr. So-and-so, the ukulele playing man in a hat who raps, and not really the right fit for us, so we're kind of making up as we go along.
We did talk about it, though. It just didn't really feel
Talks
right.
about a rap.
And we talked about
we were like, okay, well, what is steampunk music? If that's what we're making, let's just try to get some context here.
It's a British man going, nice cup of tea, give me a cup of the brown stuff. Yes, put the gears on it. And it's like, what?
0 days since the last musical number from Gaslamp Games.
This is why they kicked me out of the office and sent me to GDC, as we had an outbreak of musicals recently. Would you like me to sing for your viewers?
No. No, that's you've done enough.
Okay.
You've done enough.
Let's move on. So let's, we're covering a lot of the systems, a lot of the different modular things within the game, the dynamic music system. I'm curious personally about how combat's going to be implemented. What emphasis Clockwork Empires is going to have on combat, because it's not explicitly a game where it's not a real-time strategy game, right?
No, it's not. It's not about taking. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a sort of StarCraft thing where you send lines of soldiers and they go and get torn into little pieces. Like, it is very much a game about the characters. It's like, what if you had The Sims with combat? Like, you wouldn't want everyone dying immediately, because there's no story in that.
They actually have a Sims with Guns expansion pack. You know that, right?
Seriously? Wow.
That'd be weird.
All right, I guess I got to pick that up.
Research.
Yes.
But it's not just about people exploding. It's more how the characters react to combat. So we have this idea of having morale and people running away and.
It's like desertion, almost. Yeah.
Well, see, there's a balance between what's frustrating to the player. Actually, in all of this, all the character stuff, we want them to meet their own needs, but we also want them to be their own people. And if they just run off and do their own thing all the time, or if they run away from what you're telling them to do, well, that's a problem, and you can't get anything you want done.
Yeah.
But so that's going to be a real balancing act. Well,
I remember talking to you guys about everything from weaponized trains to
I love this.
some sort of amalgamation of Big Bens in the sky creates this giant super weapon and weaponized zeppelins. So yeah, what are some other things you'll be able to field and direct?
Well, we definitely have the Steam Power Armor Knight. That's from day one. We had to have it.
There's a lot of concept art on sort of how what things we can put in the game and how it'll feel. And there's really. It really, when we started developing this stuff, we started uncovering this, again, a really interesting thing where it's bizarre how many people have a very different understanding of what steampunk is. Because for some people, steampunk is just grungy, Victorian London with more brass. And for some people, it's Big Ben flying around. And so, one of the things that's been very interesting for us is just sort of trying to figure out, what place in this gigantic spectrum we want to be sitting in. And so, we want to have the sense of whimsy, because that's what steampunk is all about. We want to have it, gritty enough that people that when there's tragedy happening, people feel guilty about it. And so we've basically tried to develop that whole gamut of things, and then we're just basically trying to see at what point we fall in that spectrum.
Yeah, I think we had a discussion. Nicholas falls more on the high steampunk, flying Big Bens with aether guns and so on. I'm more a fan of the gritty machinery and coal-stained smokestacks, sort of China Miéville.
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, is that given that we are very much a game where you control things by jobs and orders, how do you make an interface for military control, especially for complicated units, that is very, very simple. A lot of our, trying to keep the click count low, the amount of work you have to do to set up patrol lines, that sort of thing, and how much patrolling do you actually want to do. So to some degree, that's also, we could put more stuff in, but not if it's, not if it's not accessible to the user. One of the things that people have really said that they want is that they enjoy stuff like Dwarf Fortress or City Builders, but there's a layer of complexity that is prohibitive. So it's all really about bundling what we want to do with that layer of complexity and trying to avoid it. That said, there will be, I'm going to keep the fight up for Aether guns and Tesla coils and, I don't know, voltaic things.
I'm sure there's a place for it. We'll make it work.
Yeah, no, actually, if you look historically, like there's huge empires fighting at this time. Like I'm really into the history of this, and they're all coming up with often ridiculous weapon systems, like just giant cannons and like what they think the future of warfare is, like a huge battleship that drives on land on giant wheels. Like that's a terrible idea, but we have our own little world where terrible ideas are good ideas.
Yeah, and so to get back to your question about military units, so we've got this just basically this big catalog of things, and we're trying to figure out sort of where everything fits in that. And like Nicholas was saying, one of the really tricky things for us is military control and what it's like to actually have like squads of characters moving around. And one of the things that we've been in the process of basically designing to minimize the amount of overhead is the way that you organize these units and the way that you send them into battle. And one of the things that we're really big on, again, is the story and the stories about the characters. And so one of the things that we're trying to do to minimize the amount of overhead, like the micromanagement of this, to keep casual players interested, but also to give depth to people who really want a lot of sophistication in this, is to actually have players be able to put individual characters that have individual personalities in control of squads of characters, so that their influence, their personalities, have sway over how that unit operates. So if you have a particularly bloodthirsty character and you really want to wipe out your friend's settlement, you'll put him in charge and he'll just make sure there's nobody left standing. But if you don't want to do that, but there'll be some problems with that, because maybe if he gets into an argument with one of his own squad mates, maybe he'll shoot him. So you have to make these choices, and you put people in charge, and then you live with the guilt of the horrible decisions that they make based on that.
It's like Platoon, where you have two father figures. Like, which one do you follow?
Yeah.
I think everybody, of course, is wondering, when am I going to get to play this? When am I going to see more of this in some form?
Right.
Yeah. What's an update on that? Okay.
So I think we were initially planning to be out for Q3. At this point, it's it was Q3 with a heavy emphasis on when it's done. But it turns out that some of the systems that we had to do, that we're just finishing, that we're really excited about, took a little bit longer than we were expecting, because we had to build brand new tech for stuff like the AI. And so we're probably at this point aiming for beginning of next year, just because it'll give us more time to put more stuff into it. And we figure the longer that we spend on development, the more polished it's going to be. And hopefully, we'll be able to get some betas out to some people before then, in a limited capacity, and just get people playing it and get their feedback, and just because that was so successful for us in the past.
Yeah, one of the big things that I think we all believe in as a studio is that you don't really know what's fun. Your players know what's fun, and you should listen to them and make sure that you actually incorporate that feedback. So the sooner we can get betas out to people and have some sort of external testing, the happier I think we'll all feel. So that's something for people to look forward to. Can I actually give my current estimate? Or
sure.
I'm kind of thinking July, August will be when things start going out. Kind of thinking we'll have some stuff to show at Penny Arcade Expo, maybe.
Hopefully.
So stay tuned.
Yeah.
I keep saying that.
The wonderful world of game development, all of our wishy-washy words, but we're doing this as fast as we can. We really want this game to come out to people, and we want it to be the game that people want to play. And as soon as that's ready, it'll be in their hands.
All right, so great catching up with you guys. Thanks for the update about the release date and everything else.
Yeah,
of course. If people want to learn more about Clockwork Empires or yourselves, where should they go?
They should go and hang out on our website, www.gaslampgames.com. We have a great forum community. We do a blog post every week on something to do with our game. This week it's been kind of rubbish. We apologize though. We've just been operating on coffee this whole week. And booze. We put up a guide to aristocratic tableware and a 6-image sequence of our environment artist drinking beet juice. So yeah, yes, only death can save him now. So yes, cool. Yep. Website is where it's at, and we're very social. We like talking to people. We like answering questions.
Yeah,
people should come by and meet our completely insane forums and read all the blog posts and have a good time.
All right, sounds good. Have a smooth trip back to Vancouver, guys.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.